Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast from The Sober Club. I'm Janey Grace, and this is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. We'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there's inspiration from quit-lit authors, experts and sober heroes. Hi, I'm Janey Grace. Welcome to the podcast from a very rainy UK. Welcome whatever you're up to over this weekend or this week, depending on when you're listening, of course. It's been a super busy week, as always, I suppose. And some of you in the UK may have seen a little face pop up in Woman magazine. That was funny because there's an interview I did absolutely ages ago. A journalist kind of rings you up and has a little chat, and I'd completely forgotten about it. And then I'm flicking through the mags in W.H. Smith or wherever it was, and there I am on a little piece called. They've got this kind of feature that says "Don't tell me I can't," and this one was "Don't tell me I can't be teetotal." And you know, with these kind of pieces, you never know how the journalist is going to write it. Because, you know, allegedly it's in your own words, but it never quite is. So I was a bit nervous about how it would come out. But in fact, it was fine. It's a really positive piece, I think. So I was quite pleased. And I'm there sporting my Rock Sober T-shirt from the launch of the Sober Club. So they get a little plug. And also they kept in my mention of the fact that it was Claire Pooley's book, The Sober Diaries, that inspired me to really ditch the booze. And so they've left that reference in. That's really nice of them. And they've left the reference into this podcast. So you can't say fairer than that, can you? They've mentioned Alcohol Free Life and given the link to the web address for the Sober Club. So that was a nice piece. And, you know, you just never know, do you? These magazines lie around in hairdresser salons or doctors' waiting rooms, and sometimes people just pick them up and they just get that kind of thing. Wow, okay, well, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. You just never know. Of course, if you are in the middle of Go Sober for October, if you're doing a kind of challenge at the moment, then I hope you're feeling good. I hope you're feeling on track. Please download our self-care and sobriety tips from thesoberclub.com. There's a little PDF there, and of course there's lots of blogs that might inspire you as well. And I think the inspiring you is the most important thing, and this kind of feeling that life is better. I know this is my whole message, and I talk about it absolutely all of the time. But I've recorded a guest for the podcast. I think we're probably putting it out in a couple of weeks' time. Joseph James, who is a coach. He does kind of money mindset stuff, but he has his own sort of sober journey, and it was just a great conversation that I had with Joseph. And I had to kind of temper myself, because otherwise the whole podcast would just be him and me both going, "Oh yeah, isn't life amazing? Yes, life's amazing." So I had to temper it a little bit, because, you know, of course it's hard as well, certainly in the beginning. So, but that's what I'm trying to say, is that I think if you are in those early stages, I just really want you to catch sight of what life can be later down the line. To that end, actually, I was amazed when I saw on social media the campaign, the Go Sober for October campaign, or at least one of the charities, are offering this golden ticket thing, as they call it, where if you're doing the Go Sober for October challenge, and obviously you're raising money for the charity, all of which is fantastic, by the way, there's an opportunity for you to buy or make a donation for a golden ticket, and that gives you a night off so you can drink again. I'll just leave a pause there, shall I? I mean, really, honestly, I was just absolutely knocked back when I read that. Unbelievable. You know, that just could not be more the point of, you know, the wrong way of going about this is just incredible. So everyone's walking around going, "Oh, I'm desperate to drink again, and if I pay a bit more, I can drink again." Wow. Just wow. I'm sure you know my views on that. I don't need to outline them. So if you are going sober for October, I am hereby going to tell you, please don't buy a golden ticket. Donate the money anyway. Donate what you would have spent on booze and lots more, or put it in a jar and watch it mount up, you know, but don't pay so that you can have poison to interrupt your month of not drinking. And then, you know, here's the real golden ticket. I'll give you the golden ticket. Let me tell you what it is. It's don't drink again. That's the golden ticket. choosing 90 days, 100 days, 200 days, and then you will really not want to go back. That's the golden ticket. You got to trust me on that one. My guest today, really interesting, and this is something that I came across when I do my Platinum Awards every year, and it's all for holistic products, but we also have a category for well-being and spiritual authors. And one of the books that won this year was a book called The Handbook for Highly Sensitive People. And I thought the book was great, and it just really got me thinking about this kind of term, highly sensitive people. And I know there's kind of a label for everything nowadays, but I do think if you are a certain way, it can help just to have that recognised, because it can make you feel, okay, I'm not the only one. And just like, drinking, just like alcohol, it's a spectrum, isn't it? And of course, some people are going to be sensitive sometimes and not others. But I do think this is a thing. And, as my guest will tell you, it's quite a high number of us. And so I think if you can recognise that, it can really help you to just accept that sometimes you get overstimulated and you just need to take some time out and all of that stuff. So we're going to be talking through all of that with my guest, Mel Collins. I want to remind you again, of course, about our event on Monday, 28th of October. It is half term in some areas and not in others in London. So I really hope that doesn't affect you coming, because I've got Claire Pooley as my special guest. It's being held at Hello Love Home Studio, which is in Bloomsbury. Funky, lovely little venue. We're going to have drinks courtesy of Sensor Spirits. You get a free mocktail, in inverted commas, from Sensor Spirits with your ticket price. It's only 15 quid, and all the profits go to their charity, the Hello Beautiful Foundation, who are doing absolutely amazing work for raising awareness and offering classes and workshops and therapies and trainings and all kinds of stuff for people with cancer. And they're doing everything from a non-toxic approach. So we would love to see you there. And if you want to get tickets, I'll put the link in the show notes for the podcast, or you can go to thesoberclub.com and click on events, or you can go to hellolove.home, or hellolovehome.org, I think it is. Sorry, apologies, I should have got that right. And click on Dojo, and then the link to the event comes up there. It's called Are You Sober Curious? But, and this is really important, but it's actually for everyone. It's not just for people who are at the beginning of their journey. If you've been sober for years, as Claire Pooley has, and I'm coming up to 2 years, which is very exciting, then, we're just going to have a discussion, and we're going to share whatever tips and ideas and inspiration we can with you. So please come along if you can. It's called Are You Sober Curious? It's at Hello Love. And as I say, if you go to thesoberclub.com, click on events, you can buy your ticket there. I really look forward to meeting some of you. It's 7 p.m. I know it's a Monday night, which doesn't work for everyone, but, hey, I'd love to see some of you there if you can make it. Please make the effort. If you're nervous about coming on your own, there's been some discussion in the Sober Club about this, going to sober meetups and how scary it is. And I've said several times, the first time I did it, I was so nervous. I really felt like the new kid in school. But, you just need 20 seconds of courage. I wrote a blog post about that. Just needing 20 seconds of courage. Take a deep breath, walk in, it'll all be good. Just message me before you turn up, and I'll make sure that we meet you and you won't be standing on your own. It's going to be a very intimate event anyway. So it'd be lovely to see some of you there. I've also just issued details, or by the time you hear this podcast and you get to look at thesoberclub.com, there should be details there of my very special retreat, my first ever retreat that I'm running. How amazing is that? I can't believe it, actually, but I've never really properly hosted a retreat before. It's called Sobriety Rocks, and it's going to be on January the 31st till the 2nd of Feb, 2020, obviously. And I'm hosting it at Inner Guidance Retreat Centre in Suffolk. It's a gorgeous, luxury, fabulous retreat centre. So we're going to be doing all kinds of great stuff there. It's going to be very inspirational. We'll have, in addition to the kind of sessions and the workshops, we will also have yoga, we'll have meditation, we'll have a cacao ceremony, we'll have a gong bath. So all that fabulous hippy-dippy stuff that if you've never tried it before, that's perfectly cool. If you don't want to do it, that's cool too. There's some lovely grounds and you can just go for a walk. It's entirely up to you. It's very low-key. It's amazing food. Often when you go on a retreat, And this is why I didn't choose one of the cheaper kind of retreat centres in the UK. Often you get there and the food is absolutely appalling. You just have to kind of grin and bear it because of the work you're doing. But this is not like that at all. This is absolutely the best gourmet vegan food you will ever taste. Even if you're not vegan, trust me, you will be inspired. It's just the best food. I absolutely love their food. So it's going to be super exciting. I really, really hope some of you are able to come. It's shared accommodation. There's a few single rooms, but they're a bit more expensive. We'll work that all out somehow. I don't know how, but it'll be great. I've done retreats at this venue before, and it's really quite magical. It really is. So I'm very much looking forward to hosting this. And the question that I know lots of people will be asking is, what stage do I have to be at to come to benefit from this? And the answer is it really doesn't matter. It's obviously a completely sober retreat. It's a completely alcohol-free, drug-free venue. If you're at the early stages of deciding to ditch the booze, it's completely fine. If you've been sober 4 or 5 years, that's absolutely fine too. The stuff we're going to be doing works for everyone. We're focusing on health and well-being, mindset, moving forward. We're going to do some vision stuff, goal setting stuff for 2020 moving forward. So there'll be something for you, I can absolutely assure you, whatever stage you're at. It really doesn't matter. So do check that out. Go to thesoberclub.com. Obviously, spaces are very limited, so it'd be lovely to see some of you there. So let's get into the podcast. I really hope you'll enjoy this interview. Whether or not you think you are a highly sensitive person, there'll be someone in your life who is. That's pretty much for sure. So welcome, Mel Collins. Mel, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be able to chat to you.
Thanks, Janey, for inviting me on your show.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. And when I first came across this book, you were part of the Platinum Awards, of course. I was really intrigued because, of course, I've heard this expression, highly sensitive people. We all have. But can you explain for us, what is a highly sensitive person then, and just a couple of the traits that one might present with?
Yeah, so 1 in 5 people are born with this trait of high sensitivity. It's also known as sensory processing sensitivity because of the sensory, environmental and information processing that happens in the brains and biological nervous systems of highly sensitive people. So in simple terms, a lot of HSPs, we feel our emotions much more deeply than people without the trait, and we process our emotions for longer. And we also are sensitive to environmental and sensory stimuli. So, for us, things like crowds of people, too much noise, fluorescent lighting, all of those things can sort of affect our systems as well. And if there's too much stimulation that happens, our systems can go into a state of overstimulation, really, and called over-arousal. And we just need to withdraw and take ourselves out a little bit from the world to recharge and get ourselves back into a state of balance.
I mean, 1 in 5, that's a very high number, isn't it? That's really
It is very high.
So how long has this been known as a thing, as it were? I mean, obviously, forever and a day, people will have had these emotions and traits and sensitivities. But when did we first start recognizing, and as you say, the term HSP, when did all that come about?
Well, initially in the 20th century, Carl Jung, the psychotherapist and psychologist, he came up with the term innate sensitivity, but it was actually Dr. Elaine Aron, a US psychologist in the 1990s, that really did a lot of pioneering research into the trait. And she wrote a fantastic book about the highly sensitive person. And I came across that when I was 32. I was doing my counselling training, but I was also working in the prison service at the time. And for me, it was just like a light bulb moment where it was just like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just highly sensitive. So yeah, she was the main one, I think, for modern day.
So what were your experiences then, before it was, in inverted commas, diagnosed, before you realised what it was? What was it that you used to think might be wrong with you? How did it manifest within you?
Well, when I was growing up, everyone was just telling me I was just too sensitive for my own good, that I should stop being so sensitive. I just picked up on everything around me. I was highly empathic, and that's another trait of highly sensitive people, deeply reflective, highly empathic. We also pick up on subtleties that others are not aware of. You know, we can walk into a room and feel energies, that's the sort of thing. So we're a little bit like, I would say, you know, mobile phone receivers. They transmit and they pick it up. Yeah, we're just the antennae. We just pick up on everything. So, you know, it was pretty intense sometimes as a child, feeling all these things and not understanding because nobody else felt them as well. So that was my experience, really.
I mean, this absolutely resonates with me, you know, but what's interesting here then is, you know, when you told me about some of the initial kind of traits, I mean, things like empathy would be seen as something that we would all want. We would want everyone to have high levels of empathy, surely.
Yes.
And also, you know, intuition. I mean, I think I've got an unbelievably strong intuition. I really can, as you say, pick up on. I always know what somebody else is thinking. It can be quite spooky.
Yes.
But in a way, that's quite a good thing, isn't it? So where does this thing kind of split, if you like, so that you've got the real benefits and almost the elements of it that we would want everyone to have, and then where are the kind of bits of it that can become awkward and tricky?
Yeah, well, everything's on a spectrum in some ways. You know, everybody has levels of sensitivity, and you know, people can get more sensitive as they get older, but the difference with people that have the sensitivity trait, it's that it's an innate temperament trait. So like I said, it's the sensory processing that we do. We have different reactions in the brain and our nervous system to people without the trait, you know, so that's where it differs. You know, we do feel emotions much more intensely, and a lot of the research being done now by Dr. Elaine Aron is going through the medical side of it and showing, you know, doing MRI scans on the brains and stuff, and it does show that there's higher activation levels for the sensory processing side of things and for awareness and empathy. So it doesn't mean that, you know, we're better than anything. It's just that, you know, the tricky stuff comes for us when there's just too much stimulation that goes on for us in our sensory nervous systems. And we can get into a state of sort of over arousal, like I said before. So people without the trait, they don't get bothered by too much of anything, but for HSPs we do.
Okay, yeah, I understand. And for anyone who's ever done anything like the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram, where you kind of look at these personality traits, you will know that that we're labelled as extroverts or introverts. Now, again, there's a big spectrum, of course, but is it likely that the highly sensitive person would also be introverted? Because I'm off the scale of extroversion. I mean, off the scale. I don't even particularly want to have a bath without company. But by the same token, I think I am also highly sensitive. So is that unusual, or do the two things not go together?
No, well, actually, 30%, according to the research, of HSPs are more extroverted,
right?
And 70% are more introverted. So for me, you know, I was born naturally more introverted, but you know, I have had a lot of clients as well that are more on the extroverted scale, and so a lot of things for them, like going into crowds of people and stuff like that, they're able to handle that side of things, and being around strangers or meeting people, which a lot of highly sensitive people do struggle with, public speaking, meeting strangers, they can be overstimulating for them, but extroverted HSPs tend to do better with that side of things.
Yeah, interesting. Now, of course, for the purposes of this podcast, I'm also really, really interested in the fact that people who are highly sensitive, when they turn to substances, you know, they may well do that to numb out. I mean, any of us, when we turn to substances, we're numbing out from something at some level. But how does this manifest then, this kind of turning to alcohol or sugar or whatever it might be for highly sensitive people?
I think it's that bit of that over arousal that I spoke about, really. You know, they just try anything to try and get their nervous systems into a state of relaxation. So instead of doing more of the healthy side of things like meditation or mindfulness, unfortunately we're living in a culture where, we turn for a drink, or there's also a big
quick
drug
fix,
culture going on.
Yeah,
quick fix. Yeah. So, a lot of the time, and it's not just drink, highly sensitive people will turn to food, as well as a way of trying to numb out, just trying to get their nervous system to relax a little bit more. And food and drink, can do that, but it's not the healthiest way.
So would you say that
it becomes dependent?
I mean, I don't know if you've ever done any research, but would you say that there's a notable percentage of people who are over drinkers then who might be highly sensitive?
Well, it was interesting because, my background, I did work in the prison service for 10 years. And for 2 years of those, I was an alcohol counsellor. And I came across quite a few highly sensitive prisoners there who had addiction problems. I mean, I haven't done research per se into it myself. All I can say is from my own client base and the research that I did with them, I wouldn't say that they were dependent or addicts so much, but they did like to drink on a regular basis to just try and, like we say, just try and get the overstimulation down. So there is a correlation there.
That's really interesting. Tell us a bit more about your work in the prison service then, particularly with the alcohol counselling. I'd be really interested to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, so as I said, I spent 10 years there, 2 years working one-to-one with clients with alcohol misuse issues. And that was a really interesting time for me because I went in not really knowing anything about the drug and alcohol world. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener. I was working with clients that, the healthy limits at that time, I know they've increased now, but they were like 14 for women, 21 units a week for men. And I was dealing with prisoners that were averaging about, 600 to 800 units a week. I had one that was over 1,500 units a week. They were drinking bottles and bottles of alcohol, and when they were in the real dependency stage, they were even siphoning off boot polish to get the alcohol content out, or perfume. So for me, it was just such an eye-opener about the devastating effects of alcohol dependency if they're really going down that line.
And then after sorry, carry on
I was just gonna say, and then after that I was promoted into actually jointly managing the drug and alcohol misuse services within the prison. I became a governor grade. And so I spent the next 8 years then working with different treatment programs and services to help prisoners.
Well, that was going to be my question, actually. What kind of strategies then were you able to use to help them begin to get through this?
Well, in the prison, at that time, there wasn't as much funding then for alcohol. It wasn't recognised as a problem in some ways because it's a legal drug, but it was a drug, So actually, most of the funding went through to actual drug users rather than alcohol misuse users.
Right, interesting.
But there was the AA and the NA 12-step program that came into the prison at that time. At the time when I was working with them, I was just running alcohol awareness courses, because awareness is the key for alcohol. If you really knew what it does to the body and how it affects so much of the body, and the fact that it is actually the second most damaging drug behind smoking for the body on a health perspective for people, I think a lot more people wouldn't be drinking.
That's very true. And of course, we also know that, if you take into account other factors like harm to others and harm to the economy, yes, and as well as harm to the individual, it actually comes out top as the number one drug. Amazing,
absolutely,
isn't it? It's really interesting, isn't it, when you talk about working in a prison and finding these people who are highly sensitive, because, the stereotype of a prisoner is your hard-nosed, nasty person, and not someone who would display, as you say, these traits of empathy and intuition, which, as we know, can be extremely beneficial. And we tend to think of those kinds of traits as linked to kindness and taking responsibility, don't we? So where is that? How does that conflict, if you like, come about?
I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. I didn't specifically go into working with HSPs
No,
in
no,
the
no, I get that
prison.
completely.
Yeah,
Just that you said you
yeah,
had noted that some of them were.
yeah. I mean, you're probably talking at that time, you know, people act out, a lot of prisoners were, and this isn't to justify their behaviour in any way, shape or form, but a lot of prisoners in there, have a background of being abused
Yeah,
physically, emotionally,
absolutely.
sexually. And a lot of them had been in the care system. Well, a lot of them are going to turn to
Yeah,
alcohol or drugs if they haven't had the help that they need. A lot of them hadn't even disclosed about their sexual abuse in the past.
yeah.
So a lot of them are vulnerable, but what
Mm,
you do instead of showing vulnerability is you wear a mask. And I talk
yeah,
about some of the masks that people wear generally and what the ones HSPs wear in the book. For prisoners, they tend to put on the tough guy mask, but for HSPs in my private practice, they tend to put on either the more self-reliant masks or the one of the people pleaser or caretaker or rescuer. That's quite a
absolutely.
big pattern for
Yeah,
HSPs.
I
Yeah.
bet. So, and this is so relevant when people give up drinking, because obviously when you've decided to ditch the booze, that's just step number one. And
Yeah.
when you've gone through, the various ways you're going to deal with actually physically not drinking, then of course the next thing to start to look at is, well, what have I been covering up?
Yeah.
And as you say, what mask have I been wearing? And of course, this is when so many people can, for the very first time, sometimes start to look at who they really are. I've interviewed people on the
Absolutely.
podcast, who've said, they're in their 50s and maybe they started drinking when they were teenagers. And it's only now in their 50s that they're starting to find out who they actually are, because they don't really know, because they've been drinking all
Absolutely.
those years. It's incredible,
Yeah.
but it's never too late, of course. So what would your sort of generic advice be to someone who, is maybe at the beginning of this journey, or actually whatever stage they're at, and they're just starting to recognize, okay, hold on a minute, I have been wearing one of these masks. I mean, let's take the people pleaser. That with drinkers, that's a big one. So many people drink just because their mates expect them to, or their husband or their wife or their partner expect them to. So they have a real panic and stress over, how do I say no and without upsetting everyone else?
Yeah. I mean, peer pressure is huge. That's something that is really difficult, for people to challenge. But I think a lot of that is linked to self-love and self-worth and self-esteem.
Yeah.
And, it can be difficult for highly sensitive people, particularly, to say no and learn to say no without feeling guilty. So I wrote a whole chapter in the book about self-love and learning to say no and practicing boundaries, because that's really important. If we talk about the cycle of change when it comes for people who are wanting to give up alcohol, for example, if we're talking about that in context now, the first part of the cycle of change is the first thing is pre-contemplation, where people don't think they've got a problem, but hopefully your viewers have moved past that one. So they're in the contemplation stage. As you say, they're recognizing that actually they've been drinking since they were teenagers. They don't really know who they are. It may be problematic. And it may be simple things, the amount of money they're spending, the hangovers they're waking up with in the mornings. It may be hiding the bottles. It may be their friends telling them that they're drinking too much, or they're acting out when they're drunk. They're not a good drunk, for example. So there's the contemplation stage. And then they make the decision stage of, what am I going to do about it? And this is where they've either got to think about giving up alcohol altogether, or whether they do what we call harm reduction or harm minimization, reducing the amount that they're drinking. Because for some people, if they're regularly drinking every day, to actually go fully abstinent
Of
in
course,
the first
instance,
instance might be too much.
Yeah, of course.
So the most important stage of it is the action stage, because if you're reaching for drink, for example, because one of your triggers for drinking is stress, which is such a big one in the corporate world now.
Of course,
Then you have to find other coping strategies. And this is the biggest one, because it's all about emotions. We drink because of our emotions, really, swallowing them down, numbing out, whatever it is. So the action stage is the most important stage. So it's like, okay, if your trigger is boredom, for example, what are you going to do instead of drink? So you're going to have to find some hobbies, or some activities that you can do without drinking.
Sure.
If it's stress, you need to, I would suggest, finding some healthier ways of dealing with stress. That might be exercise, because it releases feel-good endorphins. It could be, go and just work with a counsellor, go and get to know yourself, go and find out what the roots are of the stress.
Well, that was just going to be my next question. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because when people, obviously we within this podcast at least, I talk about a lot of people listening are what I would call grey area drinkers. So they're not alcohol dependent. They're somewhere on that spectrum. They've been drinking too much. Or maybe they even haven't been drinking, in inverted commas, too much, but it's too much for them because it's making them miserable, or it's making them wake up at 3 a.m. or whatever it is. I don't really care how much you drink or don't drink. It's how it's affecting your life.
Yes.
But what's interesting, I think, is do we or don't we, in your opinion, have to look back at what the causes were that started this pathway, if you like? Because for many of us, as we say, maybe start drinking as a teenager, just because everyone else does, and because when you first start drinking, alcohol's really cool at the beginning, because it feels as though it can get you through a tricky situation. It can make you feel confident. It can give you that little bit of a buzz. You can feel glamorous and gorgeous when you didn't 5 minutes before. All of that stuff. And of course, over time, it bites you on the bum. Obviously with some people there has been massive trauma and real key incidents which have caused, in inverted commas, or led to their over drinking. But others, it just has been that gradual build up of drinking socially. So I just wonder, I'm not even sure what my question is, but I'm just wondering, particularly for someone who is highly sensitive and they're now challenging everything within themselves and asking themselves all of these questions, how important is it to go back to the root of the why?
I think it's really important. I think if there's a dependency, if you need to have a drink, not a want, but a need to have a drink there, as you say, if that's self-confidence, if it's for feeling that you belong in a group with other people, whatever it is, go back and identify, that original need, and then work with it. I do think a lot of it is linked to a lack of self-worth, self-love, self-esteem. That's a huge problem for people. But also for HSPs, especially because of the emotional intensity that we have. And because they are often not just processing their own emotions, we're also a bit like empathic sponges, so we pick up and absorb other people's stuff. So many HSPs say to me, that when they're with their friends or with somebody, the other person offloads all their stuff onto them and they go away going, oh, thanks so much, I feel so much better after I spoke to you, and the HSP is ended up feeling exactly.
I know exactly what you mean. That happens to me all of the time. And particularly with my kids it's utterly exhausting. I don't know if you've got any advice for parents, but I mean, if you're a parent who is highly sensitive, you are literally taking on all of their stuff, several times over what any normal parent would, as it were. Not that this isn't normal. We have to get our language right here, don't we?
For me, parenting as a HSP, I'm a HSP, and I am a mother myself, and I mean, I've got one child, but I was a single parent, so it was intense on times, because you're constantly, as you say, dealing with their needs, being that emotional support, picking up on everything with your child because we're so attuned to everything. So I think it's important for us to have that downtime. That's the most important thing, even if it's just, 20 minutes having a bath, with the door shut and the boundaries in there of don't disturb, just to get that sensory processing back down.
So
to
I guess
nice,
what you're saying is,
level.
we can't change this. This is how we are, and in many ways, as you say, it can be a very positive thing. But I suppose the important thing here is that we have to recharge our own batteries again. And that's,
Absolutely.
I suppose that's when it goes wrong, isn't it? When it's all kind of giving out, even if the giving is only emotional, and then we're not recharging. I'm guessing you see that a lot.
Absolutely. So many HSPs struggle with burnout. They often struggle with energy disorders, so that, insomnia or, ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. A lot of HSPs seem to suffer with that. And I do think it's a lot of to do with that pattern of giving, not replenishing their own energies, not taking care of their own needs as well, and putting their own self first, their self-love, self-care. For me, another great strategy for HSPs is something called emotional freedom technique, or tapping.
I'm an EFT practitioner. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So you will know, Janey, just basically tapping on that overwhelm, or just feeling full, and just that really helps, because it's a mixture of psychology and acupressure. It helps to move all that energy that's going on in the body and find that state of relaxation and calm. Mindfulness is fantastic as well, because
how much of this is kind of recognized within the medical profession then? Because as I say, I've heard this phrase, and more people are getting your book, which is fantastic. But if the average person rocks up to a GP and says, I'm suffering from immense stress in the workplace, and I'm this and I'm that. I mean, is the GP likely to say, well, it sounds to me like you're a highly sensitive person, and I really want to recommend exercise and self-love, and or are they actually probably going to say, well, have a couple of days off work and some tablets?
It's difficult, isn't it? I don't think it's as well recognised in the, it's not a medical problem. Do you know what I mean? It isn't. Course. It's just an innate trait. So that's much more on the sort of psychology aspect of, they would refer somebody on, for example, for it's called the IAPT stuff, the interventions and psychological therapy side of things in the medical profession. But some doctors, particularly down here in the southwest where I work, a lot of them are aware of high sensitivity. And actually, I did a talk in Cheltenham on Saturday, and it was so lovely that one of the audience members said that actually her GP told her she was a highly sensitive person.
Fantastic.
And spoke about the book. So I think it's starting to trickle through, but obviously it's not wildly recognized yet, which is part of my mission, is to get it much more recognized.
Well, I'm guessing that from your perspective, if there can be much more awareness about this, particularly in the workplace, for example, then everyone's going to benefit, because people are going to be having less time off work, and leaders and managers are going to be better equipped to deal with their staff if they can allow them the space or whatever it is that they need.
Oh, sorry, you went out then. I missed the last bit. But
yes. Okay. No, sorry, I was just saying, so, it's going to be better for the economy all round, isn't it? If leaders and managers can help their staff in exactly the right way for their personality.
Yeah, what I say to my clients that come to me, because they're just, I get a lot of nurses, for example, a lot of health and social care workers. Basically, they're saying, they just don't understand the trait. And I'm saying, well, take a book in, tell your HR manager, tell your line manager that you're a HSP, just tell them the basic facts about it. And just simple little things in the workplace can make such a difference for HSP. So, for example, we don't thrive well in open plan offices. So, all the computers that are going on, all the noise around us, telephones going there, it can really overstimulate our system. So just even having like your own office can make such a big difference, just having regular breaks. You often see people going out and having cigarette breaks. So for HSPs, I just say, do the same thing, go and have a nature break, 5 or 10 minutes outside, walk around, ground yourself, do a bit of tapping. We can, if you manage the trait with all the techniques and stuff that I've put in the book, you can thrive as a HSP. It will be less stressful for you at work, because I do think that a lot of stress for HSPs is just unmanaged high sensitivity.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, finally, that you would wish that this were taught in schools, because obviously, for children and for teenagers, they're sometimes they're immersed in just technology and social media the whole time, and that can be a form of overstimulation as well, can't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to write about sensitivity in different genres now that can really, especially for school children, as you say. So I've written a picture book for very little ones, because again, they're often mislabeled as shy or introverted, or daydreamers, and actually they're just not. They're just highly sensitive. I think primary school teachers are, because a lot of HSPs themselves go into the teaching profession. So I think we're quite lucky to some extent that I think some primary school children, maybe not in the big cities that are recognised so much, but certainly I know around this area that they are.
That's good.
But yeah, and definitely teenagers, because it's such a difficult age anyway, with hormones and everything that's going on for them, but particularly for highly sensitive people. So yeah, I'm trying to spread the awareness as much as possible, and like I said, for HSPs, just the fact that they recognize that actually there isn't anything wrong with them, it is absolutely normal.
It's not a flaw.
It's not a flaw. Actually, it's a real strength and it's a real gift. And that's what I'm really wanted to change Western perception of it. Manage our trait properly. We are the best employees. We're so loyal, hard workers. We give everything. We can just flourish if the trait is understood better.
Great. Mel, thank you so much. It's fascinating to talk to you. So the book is The Handbook for Highly Sensitive People, published by Watkins. And do you want to give us your website for people to find you?
Yes, it's www.melcollins.co.uk.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Janey.
So check out the book, and if you are a Sober Club member, there's some really great extra content in the Sober Club from Mel Collins as well. She's done a little tapping routine for us. As many of you know, I'm trained in EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's a technique that I love bringing to people. I'll be doing lots more of this in the future, but just really simple little tapping techniques can be amazing for helping you overcome, anxiety and stress and some of this stuff that can get us down so easily. So if you're not already a member of the Sober Club, then please download our free PDF, Self-Care and Sobriety, or make sure that you're on the waiting list for when we open up again, because we're going to be opening up the doors in November, and it'd be lovely to welcome you on board as a member. We've got some fantastic stuff going on in there. It's really flowing. It really feels like exactly the right time to be doing this. It's very exciting. And if you are a member of the Sober Club, but you're not part of our Facebook group, I know that not everyone likes using Facebook, and I get that completely, but set up a separate profile and just join the group, because honestly, there's so much amazing value in there. Whatever stage you're at, there are some people who are at the beginning of the journey and they're working through the online course that comes with the membership. It's called Get the Buzz Without the Booze. And they're at the early stages, and there's at least one person who's been sober for 4 years. But everyone is focusing on being their best self, up-leveling, whatever that means. We've got a lot going on in terms of nutrition, health and well-being, mindset. And there's just some just incredibly magical and supportive conversations happening in there. People from all over the world too. So it would be fantastic if you wanted to join us. If you are a Sober Club member, if you're one of our founder members, please have a look at the Sober Club Facebook. Even if you're not a big Facebook fan, just see if you can tune into that. You don't have to post if you don't want to, but if you want to, then you are more than welcome. And if you're not a Sober Club member, then make sure you're on the waiting list. And then when we open up again, we'll look forward to welcoming you to our fantastic, happy gang. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I need to remind you of. Oh, I know what I need to tell you. We've got, in the Sober Club, we've been doing, or about to do, more around mindset and meditation, but real quite beginner stuff, because I'm aware that, everyone's at different stages, and lots of people are not meditating every day. And I completely understand that. It can be really difficult for a lot of us to quiet our mind. And so we end up just not doing anything at all. But I did an interview this week for UK Health Radio. You can listen on UK Health Radio with Heather Dawn Godfrey, who has written a great book called Essential Oils for Mindfulness and Meditation. And it's something I'd never even thought about before. The fact that, sometimes just in order to focus your mind using certain essential oils can be so beneficial. I mean, I use them for, drop them in the bath water with a bit of oil, and I use them for massage or inhaling, particularly if I've got a cold. I like to inhale a bit of essential oil, and I'm sure that many of you have used them, but I had managed to forget about how amazing they are for just calming you and allowing you to just observe the breath. So check that interview out. It's on UK Health Radio. And there's also an article, a blog post that you can read in the Sober Club, so which gives you a few suggestions of essential oils. So that's my self-care tip this week, is check out what essential oils you could treat yourself to, because let's face it, you're not spending money on the booze, right? So you can buy yourself, you just need, one or two. You can manage with a single essential oil, actually, as long as you've got a little bit of carrier oil if you're going to apply it topically. And as we're coming up to Christmas, well, not quite yet. Did I just say the C word? Well, not quite yet, but you know what I mean. Frankincense is a really lovely oil to work with, really great for meditation, great for focusing the mind. So have a look at maybe treating yourself to a little bottle of frankincense to aid you in your mindfulness and your meditation. So that's the self-care tip for this week. Please remember to follow me on Instagram at Janey Lee Grace. Pick up a copy of Woman Mag if you get the chance. Please have a look at that date, 28th of October. In London, Are You Sober Curious with Claire Pooley at Hello Love. If you go to thesoberclub.com, click on events, you'll find the link there to buy tickets. And don't forget to sign up for the waiting list for when we open up again. Have yourself a fantastic week. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to tell you, the really, really hot news is that I have definitely got Annie Grace lined up to be on the podcast. Can you tell how excited I am about that? That's so cool. I'm so thrilled. She's going to be a podcast guest, so we'll be bringing you that interview very soon. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast. I'm Janey Lee Grace. Please go to thesoberclub.com, listen to more podcasts, read our blogs, enter our competitions, grab yourself a free PDF, Self-Care in Sobriety, and check out our online community,